Hello guys, welcome to our second part of the video, which we want to talk about the appendicular skeleton. And the appendicular skeleton consists of the limb girdles. Previously we talked about the axial skeleton, and now we want to look at the appendicular skeleton, and it consists of the limb girdles, and the limb girdles are two. We have the pectoral girdle and the pelvic girdle. Then attached to the girdles we have hind limbs and the forelimbs. The hind limbs and the forelimbs, which are attached to both pelvic and pectoral girdles. The limb girdles, as I've said, we have two types. The first one we have the pectoral girdle, and the pectoral, it's like the shoulder region, and this girdle is found in the anterior side of the body, where the pelvic girdle found on the posterior side of the body. The limb girdles are bones on which the limbs articulate, and the limbs of all mammals are designed in the same basic plan, referred to as pentadactyl limb design, and penta, which means 5, and where each limb terminates in 5 digits. That is the fingers or toes. Then let's look at the pectoral girdle, and the pectoral girdle is made up of two halves. Each half has 3 bones, that is the scapula, the coracoid process, and the clavicle. And we have the left half and the right half. Maybe let's look at the scapula. The scapula is here, it's located here, and the scapula is a triangular in shape, as you can see here, broad and triangular in shape. Then we have the clavicle, which is located here. We also refer to it as a collarbone, that is the clavicle. And these bones are attached to the upper part of the vertebral column. The two halves constituting the pectoral girdle are not fused, but are held firmly by muscles. They are held firmly by muscles. Then the coracoid process, I think it is not shown, but it's so much reduced in human beings. So much reduced in human beings. Let's look at each individual bone of the pectoral girdle. We start with the scapula, and we said it is a flat and triangular in shape and overlays a number of anterior ribs. As you can see here, the scapula being flat, broad, and triangular in shape, and it is found in the shoulder or the pectoral region. Let's look at the adaptation of the scapula to its functions. Number 1, has a glenoid cavity for articulating the head of the humerus to form a ball and socket joint, and the ball and socket joint allows movement in all directions or a 360 degrees. We have our glenoid cavity here, and the glenoid cavity is just a cavity or a depression onto which the head of the humerus articulates or fits in to form ball and socket joint. We can also see it here. We have the head of the humerus, then we have the glenoid cavity here on the scapula, which enables formation of ball and socket joint. Then the glenoid cavity has a smooth surface for reducing friction with the head of the humerus, and we say reducing and not preventing friction, because you can't prevent friction. Then it is ossified to provide support. The other meaning of ossified, the other term to refer to as ossified, is a bony to provide support. Then the scapula has a spine for muscle attachment. We can have here the spine, which is for muscle attachment. Then it is wide to increase surface area for muscle attachment. In other terms, you can say broad and flat to increase surface area for muscle attachment. Then we also have other projections. For example, here the metacromion under the acromion, and basically the metacromion increases surface area for attachment of muscles. Then this acromion articulates with the clavicle, allowing movement at the shoulders. Articulates with the clavicle, which allows movement at the shoulders. Maybe can go back here. These are our clavicle, as you can see, articulating with the acromion to allow movement at the shoulder. Then the coracoid process provides a surface for muscle attachment. I think I said earlier on it is so much reduced in human beings. Next, let's look at the clavicle. And the clavicle articulates on one end with the acromion process. Articulates at one point with the acromion process, and the other with the sternum. We can go back and look at it. As you can see, at this end it articulates with the acromion. Then at the front here, or at the front, it articulates with the sternum. This can use it to refer to the sternum. Then the clavicle offers area for muscle attachment and assist in movement of arms. Let's look at humerus. The humerus is an example of forelimbs which are attached to the pectoral girdle, and it is found in the upper arm. The head of the humerus articulates with the glenoid cavity of the scapula to form a ball and socket joint, which allows movement in all directions. It said earlier on, the glenoid cavity of the scapula and the head of the humerus articulate from that joint. You can look here. We have the head of the humerus here, which articulates with the glenoid cavity of the scapula to form that ball and socket joint. Then let's look at the adaptation of the humerus to forming a ball and socket joint. And it has a rounded head, as we have said, to allow movement in all planes. Characteristic features of humerus: in front of the head we have a projection called greater tuberosity, and slightly below it is a ridge called lateral ridge, which offers surface for muscle attachment. You can look at it. We have the bicipital groove here. Then the deltoid ridge, as we've said here, the ridge here, which allows surface for muscle attachment. Then you have the greater tuberosity here. Then lesser tuberosity on the lower side. And they just provide surface for muscle attachment. Then at the lower end, or we call it distal end, we have a trochlear, which is grooved for articulating with sigmoid notch of the ulna to form a hinge joint at the elbow to allow movement in one direction. Maybe we can go back. We have here the trochlear, which you are saying it articulates with the sigmoid notch of the ulna and radius to form a hinge joint, which allows movement in one direction or 180 degrees. Then apart from that, our humerus here has a shaft. This is the shaft to increase surface area for attachment of muscles. Then it also has a olecranon fossa here. This is the olecranon fossa. It is like a cavity, and that olecranon fossa fits in the olecranon process, which allows a movement at the arm, that is the forearm. Then another feature which is observed on the humerus, the proximal end of the humerus is enlarged while distal end is narrow. And the proximal end, it is the upper end. This is the proximal end. As you can see, this is the proximal end. And on the lower end, we call it a distal end. Distal end is a narrow, while this proximal end is enlarged. Let's look at the ulna and radius. The ulna and radius, and these are two bones in the forearm. The radius is found on the side of the thumb. We have the radius here, found on the upper side. We have a radius here, and this radius, as you can see here, the radius is found on the upper side, on the side of the thumb here. Then while ulna is found on the lower side and on the side of the shortest finger. That is the ulna. And the ulna has a projection we call olecranon process. We have this projection here, which is the olecranon process, which forms a sigmoid notch. We have the sigmoid notch here, which forms a sigmoid notch, which articulates with the trochlea of the humerus, forming a hinge joint, which allows movement in one direction. We can look at the olecranon process here. Then this is the ulna. The ulna is here. It has formed a sigmoid notch here, and the sigmoid notch, it is articulating with the trochlea of this humerus to form a hinge joint which allows movement in one direction. Maybe for emphasis or repetition, this upper bone is called the radius, and it is attached onto the ulna, found on the upper side, and it ends with a thumb. Then we have functions of the olecranon process of the ulna, and provides surface area for attachment of ligaments, the tendons, the muscles. Then prevents overstretching, the keyword overstretching, of the forearm at the joint. Then this olecranon process does the same work as the kneecap or patella, which is found on the hind limbs, and also it provides surface area for attachment of ligaments, muscles, tendons. Then prevents overstretching of the hind limb. Let's move to the carpals, metacarpals and phalanges. And the carpals are small bones found on the wrist. You can have the carpals here. There are small bones found on the wrist. And the metacarpals are found away from the wrist, that is in the palm, and are much longer than the carpals. The phalanges are bones that constitute fingers. As you can see here, we have the phalanges. Then next, let's look at the bones of the hind limb. And before we look at the bones of the hind limb, we must look at the pelvic girdle. We have the pelvic girdle here, and it consists of two halves fused together at the pubic symphysis. This is the pubic symphysis, and each consists of three bones. That is the ilium, the ischium, and the pubis. Ilium, ischium, and pubis. And these three bones are fused to form the innominate bone. This is the innominate bone. And the two halves consisting of the pelvic girdles are held together at the pubic symphysis. We can look at the pubic symphysis here, to this one here, and we're talking about these halves, the first half, and this is second half being fused together at the pubic symphysis. And the pubic symphysis is composed of a flexible cartilage which permits widening of the female girdles when giving birth, and this is assisted by hormone relaxin, which enables the relaxing of that pelvic girdle. Then each half has a cup-shaped cavity called acetabulum. And acetabulum is for articulating the head of the femur to form a ball and socket joint. We have the cup-shaped here, the cup-shaped acetabulum. We have the cup-shaped here, and this cup-shaped articulates with the head of the femur. You can see the head of the femur. These are femur here. You can also say these are femur, to form a ball and socket joint which allows movement in all directions. Just like at the shoulder, we have this scapula with the glenoid cavity which articulates with the head of the humerus to form a ball and socket joint. Then we have the ilium, found above the acetabulum and dorsally articulates with the sacrum and the sacral facets. You can have here, these are ilium, and you can see the ilium at this base articulates with the sacral vertebrae, that is with specifically sacral facets. Let's look at the adaptations of the ilium to its functions. And it is wide to offer a large surface area for attachment of thigh muscles. Then has a sacral facets that attaches it to the transverse process of the first sacral vertebra. And between the ischium and the pubis is a hole called obturator foramen. Let's look at the obturator foramen. This is the obturator foramen. As I said, it's found between the pubis here and the ischium on both sides. Also we have here the obturator foramen. And the role of obturator foramen: number one, passage of blood vessels, nerves, and muscles. Then it also assists to reduce the weight of the pelvic girdles and hence lighten the load to be supported by the hind limb. Ischium is isolated below the obturator foramen, and we can look at the ischium. We have our ischium here. The ischium is here, and it's just for provision of surface for attachment of muscles. Then adaptation of pelvic girdles to its function: number one, acetabulum is cup-shaped, hence forming a cavity for articulating with the head of the femur to form a ball and socket joint, which allows nodding of the head. Which allows to form a ball and socket joint, which allows movement in all directions. Then the ilium is wide to provide a large surface area for attachment of thigh muscles. Then the same ilium has sacral facets that attaches it to the transverse process of the first cervical vertebra. The obturator foramen is a hole that reduces weight of the pelvic girdles and allows passage of nerves, blood vessels, and muscles. Let's look at the femur. And the femur is a long bone found between the hip and the knee. And the head of the femur is rounded to fit into the acetabulum of the pelvic girdle, thus forming a ball and socket joint. As you can see, is the head of the femur. That is the head of the femur, which fits into the acetabulum. Then the distal end of the femur has expanded and rounded knobs called condyles. Distal end, we said, distal end is the lower end. As you can see, it has a rounded knobs. These are just condyles, we call them condyles, for articulating with the patella or the kneecap, and also articulating with the tibia to form a hinge joint at the knee. And the hinge joint, we said, it allows movement in one direction or 180 degrees. Then this femur has what we call the greater and lesser trochanter. We have the greater trochanter here, and the lesser trochanter is here, which provides surface area for attachment of thigh muscles. And before we look at the difference between humerus and femur, you can also look at these lower diagrams showing the femur. As you can see, we have the head here, a small head, then a neck which connects the head of the femur and the less and greater, or the greater trochanter. Then the shaft is probably for attachment of muscles. Then at the lower end we have the condyles we talked about for articulation with the patella and tibia. Distinguishing features of femur we've talked about: prominent head which is smaller than that of the humerus of the same animal, then a short neck joining the head of the shaft, then the shaft is longer than that of the humerus of the same animal, then the distal end of the lower end is enlarged while the proximal end is narrower. Difference between humerus and femur: the first one, humerus has a larger head while the femur has a smaller head. The second one, proximal end of the humerus is enlarged while the femur distal end is the one which is enlarged. Humerus has a shorter shaft while the femur has a longer shaft. Then another difference, humerus has an olecranon fossa which fits into the olecranon process, and the femur lacks olecranon fossa. Let's look at the tibia and fibula, and these bones are found in the leg. The tibia has two oval surfaces, as you can see here, which articulate with the condyles of the femur. Let's see, we talked about the femur and we said they have rounded knobs called condyles. They articulate with the oval surfaces of the tibia. Now the tibia lies on the side of the big toe, this side, the big toe here. Then fibula is smaller in size, as you can see, the fibula smaller in size and is fused to the tibia on the lower or the distal part of the leg. You can see it is fused here. Then the tarsals, metatarsals and phalanges, and the tarsals are ankle bones that slide over each other, forming gliding joints, or the descriptive word is sliding joints, because those bones are able to slide over each other. And they articulate with the tibia and fibula. The metatarsals link the tarsals with the phalanges, and the phalanges are bones of the toes. Just like the carpals, metacarpals and phalanges are the forelimb. You can see the tibia here articulating with the tarsals here. Also the fibula is here articulating with the tarsals. Then you have metatarsals. Then in the lower end we have phalanges. Let's look at joints and movement. And a joint is a connection between two or more bones, and the joints are operated by a pair of antagonistic muscles. And antagonistic muscles means these muscles work in pairs. When one contracts, the other one relaxes. And the muscles that contract to cause bending at a joint are called flexor muscles. I have here. But those that contract to cause straightening, call them extensor muscles. The types of joints in mammals, we have three types. Number one, immovable joints, e.g. fused bones of the skull and the pelvic girdles. Then we have gliding joints found at the wrist and the ankle, that is at the carpals and tarsals. Then movable joints. The movable joints. Let's look at the movable joints, and are found at various points of the appendix. Movable joints are also referred to as synovial joints. Characteristics of movable joints. Number one, the bones at the joint are covered with a cartilage at the articulating ends to reduce friction. And this is the cartilage we are talking about. This is the cartilage we are talking about. Then another one is here, the cartilage of the two bones. Then the articulating bones are held together by tough ligaments, as you can see, and the role of the ligaments is just to attach bone to bone. You can see this upper bone articulating with the lower bone, and we have a ligament connecting the two. Then the joint area is filled with a fluid referred to as synovial fluid, and the synovial fluid lubricates the joint. You can look at the synovial fluid. It is here. It is a synovial fluid, and the synovial fluid is secreted by an enclosed by a synovial membrane. We have our synovial membrane here, which secretes this synovial fluid and also encloses the synovial fluid. Types of movable joints. Number one, ball and socket joints. Number two, hinge joint. Let's look at ball and socket joint. And it is found between two bones. One bone has a round head and the other has a depression into which the head of the first bone fits and moves freely, and the ball and socket joint allows movement of the limb in all directions, that is through 360 degrees. Just like the word, one bone has a round head which is like a ball, then the other bone has a depression. It has a depression here which acts like a socket onto which the ball enters. That's why I call it ball and socket joint. Then advantage of ball and socket joints: they allow movement of the limb in all planes. They allow movement of the limbs in all planes. The disadvantages: they are unable to bear very heavy loads. Examples of ball and socket joints: we have shoulder joint between head of the humerus, here, and the glenoid cavity of the scapula. Also, we have the hip joint between the head of the femur and the acetabulum of the pelvic girdle. Let's look at them. Pectoral girdle and the humerus. We have these are the humerus here, and this is a head-like which forms a ball that fits into the glenoid cavity of this scapula, thus forming a ball and socket joint which allows movement in all directions. Then you can see ligaments connecting the two bones here, then cartilage of the two bones here to reduce friction. Then we have synovial membrane here which secretes the synovial fluid that reduces or lubricates the joint and also encloses synovial fluid. We can also look at the pelvic girdle and the femur. We have our femur here. It has formed something like a ball which enters the acetabulum, which is a socket-like, to form a ball and socket joint. Then you have the ligaments which hold the two bones together. We have a next hinge joint, and the hinge joint is a movable joint where depression in one bone allows smooth condyles of another bone to fit and articulate. Hinge joints allow movement in one direction, that is through 180 degrees. Examples of hinge joints: we have the joint at the corners of the humerus and the sigmoid notch. Then we have the knee joint and the joint between the phalanges. Movement at a joint, at a movable joint, bones are held together by an inelastic tissue called ligament. And the functions of a ligament, they hold bones together at a joint, and they restrain movement of the bones, thus preventing dissolution. And the muscles are attached to the bones by inelastic tissue called tendons, or called tendon. And a muscle is attached at 2 points. The first one, you have the origin on an immovable joint. Maybe, for example, at the pelvic girdle, it is an immovable joint, and the insertion on the movable joint, for example, for example, the femur, that is an insertion. Then origin on an immovable bone, that is a pelvic girdle, as an example. Then the joints are operated by pairs of antagonistic muscles. I said antagonistic muscles, they work in pairs. When one contracts, the other one relaxes. Muscles that bring about bending at a joint are called flexor, while those that cause straightening of the limb are called extensor muscles, not exterior, extensor muscles. Movement of the hinge joint of the elbow, and movement takes place between ulna and the humerus. Upward movement of the lower arm is brought about when the biceps or the flexor muscles contract, while the triceps or the extensor muscles relax. And when triceps contract and biceps relax, the lower arm is lowered. Then during upward movement of the lower arm, the hinge joint at the elbow serves as the fulcrum, where the bicep muscles provide the effort to lift the load at the lower arm. As you can see here, the ulna, the radius, the humerus, the movement at the hinge joint, and we have the origin, immovable bone. Then we have insertion. Insertion is a bone which is able to move. Then we have the biceps or the flexor muscles which contract, but the triceps muscles relax, thus allowing the arm to bend. Then the opposite is true. When the triceps muscles contract while the biceps muscles relax, it causes straightening of the arm, as seen. We have some revision questions. Arrangement of bones and muscles in the human arm. Name the bones labeled K and L, and the K is here, is the ulna, and the bone labeled L here, that is a humerus. As you can see, it articulates with the scapula. Then explain how upward movement of the lower arm is brought about by the bones and muscles as shown in the diagram. We said earlier on, when the biceps muscles contract, tricep muscles relax, causing the arm to bend. Then when the tricep muscles contract while the bicep muscles relax, it causes straightening of the arm. Then 3 ways in which support is brought about in a leaf. We shall skip that one and move to structure and function of muscles. And a muscle is a tissue that is specialized for contraction and relaxation. And we have 3 types: smooth muscles, skeletal muscles, cardiac muscles. And from the picture or the photograph, you can look at the smooth muscles found in the intestines, and it is a spindle shaped. Then the skeletal muscles, as you can see from the word skeleton, you can see they are striated. That is because they have striations. Then the cardiac muscles basically are the heart They look like this. We call them cardiac muscles. Let's look at the smooth muscles. And the smooth muscles are muscles found on the walls of tubular visceral organs like blood vessels. The key word is the tubular visceral, found in organs like blood vessels, gut, urinary tract, respiratory tract. And cells for smooth muscles are long and spindle shaped, as you can see. You can see they are spindle shaped and long, and they contain minute filaments called myofibrils. You can look at the myofibrils here. These are the myofibrils. And they're enclosed by a plasma membrane, and they lack cross striations. And the smooth muscles are capable of slow involuntary contractions, and they contract and fatigue slowly, unlike the skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are muscles that are attached to the skeleton. They play a very important role in locomotion, and they have stripes running across them, and are thus referred to as striped or striated muscles. As you can see here, these are the striations or the stripes. That's why they are called striated muscles, because they have striations. And each skeletal muscle fiber has many nuclei, or we say multinucleated. You can see have several nuclei. That's why we say multinucleated. Each fiber contains many myofibrils running parallel to each other. We have the myofibrils here, which are running parallel to each other. Then the covering of a skeletal muscle fiber is called sarcolemma, and the myofibrils are made up of thick protein strands called myosin and thin parallel protein strands called actins. Actins and myosins are used for contraction, and the skeletal muscles have numerous mitochondria in the sarcoplasm to provide large amounts of energy for muscle contraction. Then the sodium and calcium ions are necessary for muscle contraction, and contraction of muscles create a force that is transmitted onto the skeleton in the same magnitude by tendons, bringing about appropriate movement by the skeleton. And the skeletal muscles contract and fatigue very fast. You can look at how the skeletal muscles look like. You can see the sarcomere, the sarcolemma, the striations, the myofibrils, sarcomere. Then adaptations, they have numerous mitochondria to maximize energy production for contraction. Then elongated fibers to allow maximum change in length. Then they have actin and myosin, which facilitate contraction and relaxation. Cardiac muscles, and these are the heart muscles. And each muscle fiber consists of short cells, which are centrally placed or with a centrally located nucleus, and numerous striated myofibrils. As you can see, we have the nucleus here, then we have the striations. Then the ends of the cells have thickened regions called intercalated discs. You can see the intercalated discs. And the intercalated discs form bridges between fibers, hence transmits impulses rapidly throughout the heart. And contraction of the heart muscles are generated from within the heart itself without nervous stimulation, and that we mean they're myogenic. They're generated from the heart itself. Then the cardiac muscles are capable of continuous rhythmic contractions without fatigue throughout the life of a mammal. And the cardiac muscles have more mitochondria than skeletal muscles to sustain there are higher energy demand. Remember, the heart continuously pump without stopping, and therefore they need a lot of energy, and therefore they must have numerous mitochondria. Let's look at the adaptation of cardiac muscles. They have intercalated discs to ensure rapid transmission of impulses throughout the heart. Then they have numerous mitochondria to provide energy for muscle contractions. Differences between skeletal muscles and smooth muscles. Skeletal, we have an example, the bicep muscles and the tricep muscles. In smooth example, we have the muscles of the gut wall. Skeletal muscles, we say they are striated because they have striations, but the smooth muscles lack striations. Skeletal muscles are multinucleated, it means they have many nuclei, the fibers. The smooth muscles are uninucleated, they have a single nucleus, they are fibers. Skeletal muscles have long fibers, or the smooth muscles have short fibers. Then skeletal muscles are cylindrical in shape, while the smooth muscles, they have a spindle shaped. Then the skeletal muscles, the nucleus is peripherally located, while smooth muscles, the nucleus is centrally located. Then differences between cardiac muscles and the cardiac muscles, we said the muscles which are found in the heart, and the smooth muscles. Cardiac muscles have striations, smooth muscles lack striations. Cardiac muscles have intercalated discs, while the smooth muscles lack intercalated discs. Then functional differences between skeletal muscles and cardiac muscles. And the contractions of cardiac muscles are myogenic. That is, they are generated from the heart itself, or within the heart itself, while those of skeletal muscles occur due to nervous stimulation. Then skeletal muscles contract and fatigue rapidly, while cardiac muscles contract continuously without fatigue. They contract rapidly without fatigue. You can look at these muscles, and these muscles are just the skeletal muscles. And that is the end of the appendicular skeleton, plus the types of muscles we have in our bodies. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, and share. Thank you.